He joined Tom and I and Zach yesterday. Good stuff. All right, so Oklahoma State basketball last night, taking on TCU. Oh, man, they just didn't look good from the start, Zach. They did not look good from the start. It was a slow one. I mean, we've talked about that multiple times this year, that there have been slow starts a lot this season, and this was no different. And then part of it is, you look at Cade's, what he had in the first half. He picks up 2 fouls and sits most of the half. It's hard to do anything when you're not out there on the floor. But I want to, you know what? Instead of going straight from the beginning here, I want to look at that final sequence. This is my first segment here right away. And that was one of those times where you're like, man, I love to live and die with Cade Cunningham shooting the basketball. But that was one of those times where you're expecting something a little bit different. Because he has to know better. I mean, it's not like there was 5 seconds left and you were down on the scoreboard. There were 12 seconds left. It was a tie game. And you have to set up a play and get a better look where you don't have to drive on 3 guys by yourself. And Mike Boynton talks afterwards in the post game, and he says, "Hey, man, clearly he needs to know that, but at the same time, you can't fault him for being aggressive." And when I heard that, I'm like, actually, we can fault him for being aggressive there, because I obviously want Cade to take the final shot, and I've said that before to you that I would live and die with what he does. But there are exceptions, and that was a time where that was an exception, where he should have set something up. At the very least, you don't get a shot off, or you don't get a good look off, and you go to overtime or whatever. But driving in on 3 guys with 11 seconds left by yourself, not great. I mean, that's something I think that if he looks back on that, and I'm sure he's seen that tape a bunch by this point, it's like, man, I really could have set something up there. I had guys that were open and could have made a play. But I don't know about you, Zach, but that's one of those that if I'm living and dying with Cade on that, I want to switch it up to a better look because you had plenty of time to do so.
No, absolutely. And there were a few sequences in that final minute. Obviously, Bryce goes to the line after getting fouled. Cade's inbounding the ball. You obviously want Cade to be the one to get that pass because he's the team's best free throw shooter. But in a situation like that, Cade's the best passer on the team, so you need him to inbounds that ball. Bryce ends up making one of the 2, and you go down into the final, that final 20 seconds with the game tied up. Something that's interesting about Cade with that drive he had. I don't think anybody agrees with the time he took that shot. I mean, you never want to try to attempt that shot with 12 seconds left. I know that he had really heated up there towards the end of the game, scored all 19 of his points in the second half. But if you go back to the final few minutes of that game, 2 or 3 minutes, he attempted that shot. That was like the 3rd time he had attempted that shot in the lane with 2 or 3 defenders around him, and he didn't make any of them. He missed all 3 of them. So that was something that. I obviously want the ball in Cade's hands at the end of a game, no matter the situation. If they're, if they're tied, if they're down a few, if they're up a few, if they're up 20, I want the ball in Cade's hands at the end of the game, and I'm comfortable and confident that he's going to make those shots more often than not. I think there were a lot of things that went into that game. Obviously, you hit on it. I think he was only in the game for 4.5, 5 minutes in the first half before he picked up 2 fouls. He had no points in the first half. He really struggled from the field. And honestly, it took him a little bit to heat up. I don't think he hit his first bucket or scored his first 2 points from the free throw line at the 16.5-minute mark of the second half. So I mean, he struggled from the field most of the game, and something that it obviously ended up not working as well as you would have liked it to, but he allowed the student section of TCU to kind of get in his noggin a little bit. He rose up and knocked down some big shots, but I think that might have. I'm not saying that the student section forced him to shoot a shot, to shoot that shot with 12 seconds left, but you could tell after every bucket he took, he was looking up in the stands. So there might have been a little bit of forced issue there to try to play hero instead of let's run this clock down to 5-6 seconds left on the clock and then let's attempt a shot.
Yeah, and honestly, like when I was listening to that, like why is everybody so heated about that? Like if you think about it, you had to me, it felt like as normal as I've heard anything this season in college basketball, because you actually had a student section that was engaged. And why do you think they were yelling overrated? The dude, the number 1 draft pick in the NBA, had no points coming in the second half.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's funny. You know, it doesn't. It's not something that's like, there were people I saw all over social media. Oh my gosh, how could they do that? I mean, come on. This is nothing. This is nothing different. And hey, maybe it did motivate him. I mean, yeah, he looked up at the stands at one time and told him to be quiet, and that was cool. That was good. I don't know. Maybe you're right. It did get deeper into his head, and he was focused on it. And if so, then the student section did their job. But I was wondering that last night. The broadcasters were mentioning it to nauseam. I mean, it was like they acknowledged it over and over and over, and it was insane. I saw it everywhere. I was like, big deal, man. This is the number 1 guy. Could you imagine if we were at normal full stadiums like we always did? This would be the case every single place he goes. So I didn't think that was a huge deal. But I am with you that in that situation, and maybe, I guess, that comes with some more experience in college. I don't know if that's the right way to put it or paint it. At this point, I would expect Cade to know, look, I've played enough of basketball that I know at that time, if I'm really going to take over and make a big play, I got to set something up here. You know, he's so good at setting his teammates up. Well, that was the perfect time. It wasn't time to play hero. He could have played hero in that sequence, but he could have got a much better chance at actually becoming one there than instead of going up into traffic. Now, look at the other end of it. You get the ball back down the floor if you're TCU really quickly, and look at Oklahoma State's defense in that time. They were kind of standing still watching. You know, they were kind of caught in the headlights a little bit in transition defense, and I think Mike Boynton even mentioned that. But and you get down to the very end, and Avery Anderson goes up and tries to make a play. And I don't fault him for it at all, because, you know, when I saw it live, I thought they were going to call it a charge. I really did. Mm-hmm. But then on replay, it looked to me like Avery was still moving just a bit. And then if I were to pick a side, I would say I think the refs probably got it right. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, but I think the refs probably got it right in that call. I would have been completely fine with a no call as well, because it was so bang. But I applaud Avery, because he wasn't going to go up and block that dude, I don't think. So it was a good attempt to try to get a play where you get a charge, you get the ball back with 2 seconds, and then you go to overtime instead of giving up a 3-point play. So I applaud him for that. But what did you think, Zach? Were they right on the call there on the block?
In the moment, no. You know, when you're watching that game, there's no way they were right, because, you know, it was a Higgins crew. There were, you know, fouls galore left and right, really ticky-tack fouls. But as soon as I saw Avery, you know, attempt to set up that charge, you knew a call was going to happen. You know, there was no way that was going to be a no call. Now, I don't know how much Avery caused it, to so much so that that Leedy was already in the act. You know, and that's I'd heard it explained that, you know, and he had already started the shot, and so, you know, Avery slides in at the last minute, and I you know, you could probably argue either way that Avery was moving, or that he had already, you know, he had like just come set. But, man, I don't know. I mean, the way Higgins calls a game and his crews call a game, I 100% expected a shot there. You know, or expected a foul call. Either way, whether it was a charge or a block. But the way things went for Oklahoma State in the final three or so minutes of that game, with how sloppy they were playing and some of the ticky-tack calls that were going against them, you know, when you see Avery start to move, you just kind of like, oh man, this isn't gonna go OSU's way.
Well, and it wasn't that final play that was the game. I mean, I think that's plain and simple.
100%. Yeah, that didn't end the game.
Right. If you go back to the start of that second half, they played about as bad overall as I've seen them play this season.
Absolutely.
Right at the beginning of that half, it was not good.
Well, same.
They came out and it was but they came out in that second half and it was like even worse. Like, and they got down by 10. And then they were lucky to be able to claw back in that one. But good thing Cade decided to come alive. And, of course, you got really good performances again. You got another one from M.A. I mean, maybe he's the one we should start saying, Zach, that should be our guy who's turned the corner. Because, and you know what, I'll give credit to where it's due here. Tom was spot on yesterday about Caleb Boone. He was. He came on with us and mentioned, hey, I want to see what he does against some tougher competition, and he was an absolute non-factor in this game. And that's not a great sign, especially with Texas coming in on Saturday. That's not what we wanted to see. But you got a really good performance from M.A., his third double-double in 4 games. And then, of course, you got Rondell playing lights out as well. Bryce had a decent game. And the other big no-no for me here, I mean, Ice is still nowhere to be found.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, where has he gone? These last few games, he's just been completely removed, and he's disappeared from the game plan a little bit, and it's just like not the normal Ice we're used to seeing. But so he goes on my list of man, if he had played normal at all, we might have had a better chance as well. And I thought Fair and Flavors, though, if I twisted around, I think he looked good in his return with a couple of big threes, so that was encouraging. So there's positives and negatives here. But with no presence from Caleb Boone and Ice, for that matter, Zach, that was going to be a tough one to win.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's I didn't think that Caleb was going to go out and put up, 15 points and haul in 8+ rebounds. But the way he's played, 4 out of the last 5 games, like that, you would expect him to go out there and play somewhat decent, but it was like he gets out there and he can't really do anything. You can automatically see the size difference. You can see that coming into play really early. And he picked up 2 quick fouls as well. He picked up a couple early fouls, and he didn't play much there in that first half. But when he was back out on the court, it was almost like the physicality difference and the size difference played into the mental aspect of this game, and it would just, he was a non-factor.
Yeah, it's something you couldn't afford, and I'm like you. I didn't expect him to maybe necessarily keep up what he was doing to that extent, but any type of presence at all from him would have been greatly helpful in that game, and just wasn't. So I mean, it's overall, this is a bad loss, man.
Well, and I will
being
say,
completely honest,
I will say a couple bright spots to this game. Turnovers were they limited turnovers. They only had 11. Now I will say turnovers came in inopportune times. Cade finishes with 4, and the turnovers they did have were bad turnovers. They were inexcusable turnovers, but. MA only had 2 turnovers. That's huge. You add only 2 turnovers to 17 and 10 performance. That's huge. And Farron Flavors. Farron coming into the game, getting his first minutes for the first time since the start of January. And those were his first made 3-pointers, ironically enough, since that TCU game back in December. So he came out and he hit 2 big buckets when they needed it. Obviously, it didn't play a factor in the end. But those, it's like a Band-Aid. It's something that'll make you feel a little bit better for, the time being. But like you said, it's an inexcusable loss. There's no reason, it's like we were talking about with Tom yesterday. There's no reason that Oklahoma State shouldn't be going into halftime with double-digit lead. And it goes back to what I have been saying all season long. I don't understand the mentality of we're gonna play to the opponent's level, and that's something that Boynton mentioned. He didn't specifically say those words, but he was like, I don't understand. Coming into this game, I think we just kind of assumed that we were better than them, and that we were going to score more points than them, and that we would have the ball last, and that obviously wasn't the case.
Well, and if that's the truth, and like he mentioned that he was disappointed with their, how they approach this game mentally, it's like, why is that the case then at this point in the season? How can you expect to be a successful team in the Big 12 if that's the truth? I don't know why that would be the case. And of course, I understand at times younger teams and teams in general, they're going to come in and have off nights. I get it, but at this point in the season, man,
absolutely,
I'm telling you,
especially in the must-win games.
Yeah, and this is absolutely, that's a great point. I mean, it's TCU, for crying out loud. They're completely beatable, and that was one that was let slip away. And then, of course, the other part of it too, Zach, when you look at the end of it, free throws again.
Yeah, absolutely. They missed 10 free throws.
it can't happen.
Yeah.
It can't happen. How many times I got to go back to that as well? Those are two things that at this point in the season I would expect to have gotten better, or the mental approach to a Big 12 basketball game. I don't care if it's Iowa State or if it's Baylor, and the other one would be free throws. And that brings in a lot of questions, like where is this team right now? Who is going to step up? Why is Ice disappearing? Why is Cade not able to get anything going in the first half? There's so many questions that we don't have answered at this point that I thought by now we for sure would.
Yeah, 32 of 22. Boynton was asked about free throws. What's the issue there with free? And he's like, I don't know. I don't have an answer for that, because, and he's talked about it all year long. We take our free throws. And I've had it relayed to me multiple times. They shoot free throws before practice, during practice, after practice. You got guys coming out after games at home, in Gallagher-Iba at home, shooting extra free throws. And it's not like, if you go through the box, it's not like it's only freshmen that are missing. Cade is pretty automatic,
yeah.
But other than that, it's... 22 of 32. You miss 10 free throws, and you go through the whole year. The games that they've lost, other than Baylor, they've lost by single digits, and they have double-digit misses in free throws. So, do with that what you will.
Yeah, it's something that should not be happening, that's for sure. Disappointing loss, no doubt. We got to turn it around because Texas is coming up in a couple of days, and that's a big one. When we come back here on the Afternoon Sports Drive, Dan Buffer from KSDK News in St. Louis is going to join us. We're live at Brown's Bottle Shop back after this.
You can call till your voice is running out, but I can't hear you now. I can't hear you now. I'm somewhere far away where you can't bring me down, so I can't hear you now. I can't hear you now. Yeah, run it back, tell them what I'm coming at.
Welcome back in. This is the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network with Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster, live from Brown's Bottle Shop, 128 North Main here in Stillwater. Need stuff for your Super Bowl. If you need alcohol, this is where you're coming. Bottom line, come get it. You're going to find it here at Brown's Bottle Shop. That and the Super Bowl go hand in hand, so make sure you get it done. Joining us now here on the Afternoon Sports Drive, my guy Dan Buffa from KSDK in St. Louis. Dan, first of all, man, thanks for coming on, and happy belated birthday, by the way. Did you get to do anything special for that?
I essentially just did about as least as I could, possibly. I did a couple of chores around the house. A good husband should never stop collecting brownie points, even on his birthday. So other than that, I just drank and didn't do really anything else except for watch a little TV.
All right, so you mentioned the drink. What's your go-to?
My go-to right now is Bullet Rye. It's just a little smoother than the regular stuff, but it hammers you just as much.
There you go. That's all that matters, man. Good stuff. Yeah, it's fitting. We're over here at the Brown's Bottle Shop today, getting a look at all the new liquors they have. So I was curious what you've been sipping on. Hey, I know that it had to have been a little bit of a celebration as well, because I would imagine that the feel around St. Louis has to be pretty good, knowing that they got arguably the best third baseman in the entire landscape of Major League Baseball over there now.
I can't really. I've had to sit back and think. Look, you guys are coming live from Stillwater. Isn't that the home of Matt Holliday?
Yeah, I was just about to say, actually, later on, he was on our show yesterday, and he talked with us a little bit. Yeah, he kind of gave us some insight about Arenado with the Rockies and all that. So it was good stuff.
Yeah, it's just one of those things, because his signing and really his trade and his eventual contract, that was a big move. But I think this is the biggest acquisition that the Cardinals have made, at least in my lifetime. And look, speaking of a belated birthday, that's about 38 years. that's not like it's one of. I can't think of another trade that has this much of an impact on the team, offensively, defensively. He's won 8 Gold Gloves, a Gold Glove for every year he's been in the majors. And just for kind of a comparison, Scott Rowland have won 8 in his entire career. So this guy's the real deal, and he's also. Look, we don't have to go over the hitting stuff. He's a marvel at the plate. He can hit it to every field he wants to. He can hit for power, and I'm not worried at all about him hitting well outside of Colorado.
We're talking to Dan Buffa here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. Yeah, so you mentioned the fact that this is one of the biggest trades, the biggest trade you've ever seen since you've been around with Cardinals baseball. And it's funny because a lot of people that I've talked to have actually said that, and that's kind of been a question I've been throwing out there: is where would you rank this as far as most important trade that you've seen? They're always like, man, this is it. This is the one, and I'm not sure we're going to see one as important as this before it's all said and done.
No, I mean, look, you think about Mark McGwire, and that was kind of a whoa kind of move. But I think the way Arenado, the way that he has a contract, I mean, he's still 29. So I just think there's a different aspect to this deal. And every time you hear him on the radio, he's humble. He's talking about the minor league teams in the Cardinals organization. He wants to win. He looks like he could probably be Keanu Reeves' stunt double about 10 years ago, but he's going to be a heck of a third baseman for the St. Louis Cardinals.
Well, when the rumors started to kind of swirl again for like the third straight year about getting Nolan Arenado, how confident were you that this deal would actually get done this time when you started maybe to hear a few more reports from maybe a few more reliable sources?
I think Ken Rosenthal kind of changed it for me. When I heard him, I mean, when you read it, if you subscribed it to The Athletic and you're able to read his column, he wasn't just kind of passing it off as, they called each other and, they're sending a couple emails. It sounded like they were really into something. And just the way that John Mozeliak and Bill DeWitt Jr. work, this is something they would do. They just play coy the whole offseason. Imagine Mozeliak at ordering a pizza. Well, I might have a little bit of this. And then all of a sudden he just gets a filet mignon and chops up, puts on top of bread. That's basically what he did this offseason. He went from acquiring zero, spending zero money, zero of DeWitt Jr.'s money, to basically making the biggest trade and getting Colorado to say, oh, yeah, we'll pay essentially for his first year. Enjoy his first year on us.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it. And I had said before earlier when we heard the rumors again, it's like I think this was a huge move for Cardinals Nation as a whole, for the fan base, because you had heard so many times before about big names coming over potentially, but nothing ever seemed to get done. Like you would see Paul Goldschmidt, like that was it, right? And that was great at that time. That was a big move, but there was still something to kind of be left to be desired a little bit, I would think, for Cardinals fans. And when they finally got the news that he was for sure coming, it was like that. It was like Mosaic, like you said, kind of leaning back in this chair and saying, "Hey, I'm still here. I'm still here for a reason. Let me bring you all back in."
Yeah, I mean, look, the organization has had some misses. I mean, they essentially made the best offer that Miami received for Giancarlo Stanton. He said no. I mean, he essentially did what Nolan Arenado didn't do. He said yes. And they bidded pretty high for David Price, but got kind of pushed off by the Red Sox. So I think the Cardinals have had a chip on their shoulder for a very long time, since Albert Pujols left, since Oscar Tavares, tragically passed. That was their next stud, and they've been scrambling and they've made some mistakes. But I feel like they just they were at an 0-2 count. They fouled off 20 pitches, and then they just blasted one over the wall. I mean, and that's it. I mean, that's what it feels like.
Yeah, no, I would completely agree. We're talking to Dan Buffa here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. So with the power bats in the lineup now, with Goldschmidt, DeYoung, and now Arenado, I mean, that's starting to look a little scary, right? It's okay to get excited here, I think, if you're a Cardinals fan, for the offense. Yeah,
I mean, I think there's a lot of possibilities. This is where you could probably, all the Harrison Bader fans go, see, now he can play. And really, they're not wrong, because if you go defense in center field and put Carlson in left and Fowler until he gets in, maybe if Fowler, if he can produce, that's not a terrible outfield. I mean, especially if Fowler can just, I don't know if he has to use some special powers to get back to that first year in St. Louis, but that was probably his best. And if he can just get on base, and then you have a pretty strong, formidable lineup that doesn't really give. The only thing they really could use is maybe another bat, potentially an outfielder, if you did want to move Carlson to center and put some more pressure on the veterans, put some more pressure on a guy like Bader. But I don't think they're going to do that. I think they took a chance at Jock Peterson, and they kind of missed there.
Yeah, and he was definitely one of the other names I think people were trying not to get too excited about, but we're at the same time.
It's also one of those things where, he went to the Cubs, so it's like the guy you missed on. Like, there he is. He's going to be hitting against us. And then they let Colton Wong go to the Brewers, so we're going to see him about, 25, 28 times a year. So it's going to be a very interesting next few seasons in the National League Central.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that, because that's what I immediately said about Colton Wong yesterday. I was talking with a couple people, said, hey, he's going over to the Brewers, so that means the Cardinals get to see him 100 times a season, and you just know he's going to be the guy that's going to just rake against St. Louis.
I mean, look, I'm just talking about Dexter Fowler, getting back to that on-base percentage monster. Well, he might hit one in the hole, but if he does it against the Brewers, Colton Wong's going to scoop it up, and it's going to be an out. I mean, you went from getting Wong to save runs for you to now he's going to take them away from you. I mean, that's going to be it's going to be painful.
Well, and after they got Arenado, did you expect them to still make a move and try to sign Colton Wong? Because I remember when initially that came out a while back that they weren't going to, meet his demands or whatever, meet the money that he was going to basically think about being on his way. And I figured, with signing Arenado, that might kind of be the other sign that they're not going to give him any extra money here, and he might be on his way.
Yeah, I mean, for me, if I was being honest, I'll tell you that I thought they were to get the band back together. I thought that it was almost going to be like one of those music videos where just one big stud shows up and then they just keep coming through the door. So you get Arenado, you already had Wainwright back, and then Yachty's going to sign when he's done with the tournament and in the World Series. So and then you get Colton Wong to just follow him right back. And then after that, you expect, okay, they're going to bring back Matt Holliday too. Is he going to be the DH next year? But it didn't happen, and I think that's just the way these things play out. I think you win some, you lose some. I can't really complain too much about the Cardinals not doing something after what they did.
Yeah, and we were talking when we talked to Matt yesterday. He kind of mentioned that he thinks that the St. Louis really wants to get an everyday look at Tommy Edman at second base, and I think that's probably a fair way to put it too. They want to see what he can do at that position for 150 plus games.
Yeah, and that's also just that's classic baseball financial. They're just trying to save a little bit of money here and spend more there. I mean, this next year, they're going to be paying. After the Rockies pay the first year. Technically speaking, they're going to be paying a third baseman a lot more than they were the last year. So they had, cutting corners. That's just it's a business at the end of the day.
We're talking to Dan Buffa here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. So back to Arenado for a minute. What does this mean to you then for Matt Carpenter? I mean, does he become a spot starter here and a pinch hitter, and is that about it?
I think he's going to become that super utility guy. Yes, every fan is going to say, well, you're paying him $18.5. Well, it isn't like you can just pay him less. You can't just tell him that the gap and go, well, we're going to cut you down to part-time, Matt. We're going to cut your salary. No, you can't do that. He's going to make $18.5 million no matter what. So you get the most, worth out of his role. You make him that late-night tough at-bat. You have him be the guy that can play during an injury. Let's say Goldschmidt, he hits a little nick, a little bump in the road. He can play first. He can play third. He can play second. He's just going to become like the Swiss Army knife for the Cardinals.
Yeah, and we've seen how he is as a teammate, which has been great. But honestly here, when he heard the news, put me in what would be your mind if you were Matt Carpenter. When he saw that Nolan Arenado comes over, is it like, oh, man, my career at St. Louis might be over here because he has the potential to be here for a long time? Or, am I going to be able to accept a backseat role in a league that doesn't have a designated hitter where maybe I could shine?
I think he probably went outside and said, I think it's time to build a new tomato garden. I think that's what he did. I think he thought, man, I better do something now because, formally third base is taken. And so now where you could slide in last year, the year before, well, that's gone. So I think it's going to make Matt Carpenter become his best self. I think Dexter Fowler is going to come to camp knowing the Cardinals are going to be keeping their eye, even in the first part of the season, on an outfielder. He's going to come to camp as his best self. You need all these veterans to be chipping in, and kind of like I'm going to compare him to the St. Louis Blues in 2019. Every veteran Alexander Steen was on the last line, just doing whatever he had to do. So Carpenter or Fowler have to do that this season. This could be a special season for St. Louis if everybody plays their role.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great way to put it. They're going to have to come in and make a big-time impact. So how excited were you overall to hear Major League Baseball say, after a little bit of back and forth, that, hey, we're planning on starting on time this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, if cases are going down, and if they really – I would like to know what medical experts the Major League Baseball is and the Player Association are getting that go-ahead from, because you just hear so much back and forth. Like one person will say, don't do it. I think if it gets medically cleared, and I think that they have a plan of attack for getting people back in the stadium eventually, I think you start it on time, because if you don't, that's just one less normal that we get in 2021.
And mentioning that, what would be maybe your best guess as to how what the percentage Busch Stadium might allow in eventually this year? Will they go as far as to say let's get half if they're allowed to do that?
I'm not a math guy, but I know the Blues are going to plan at least this month to let 1,500 people in. I know they can fit about 18 or 19,000. So, I mean, I think the percentage is going to be low. But I think even by, let's say the second half of the season, if you're able to put 25%, even by then, I think that's a win. I think at least, maybe you get to 40% by the end of the season in the playoffs. But I think just to get a quarter full of fans in a stadium this year it'd be immense.
That's the voice of Dan Buffer from KSDK here with us on the Afternoon Sports Drive. Yeah, I agree. It would just be, it would look great. And it would feel somewhat normal. So with the pitching this team has this year already, how important do you think was it to sign Wainwright back for another year, if anything, just to get that leadership? But as well as last year, he showed that he still has what it takes, even if his fastball isn't as spry as it used to be. No,
he just finds new ways to be effective. And I think he was arguably the most effective starter last year. I mean, he still had it. I mean, it wasn't like he was trying to scratch around for outs. He was an effective, you could almost say at least a number 3 starter, maybe a number 2 for certain parts of last season, the last 2 years. So I think having him there to be, yes, that guide for the young pitchers, the person who can put up 6, 7 innings, maybe get you a complete game out of nowhere, it's huge for this team, because their rotation, it may still be another arm. I mean, they're already talking about Jake Odorizzi, of course, who is a native around St. Louis, very effective starter. So Wainwright was needed, but I think they almost have another potential leak with Miles Michaelis. You don't know what kind of effective shape he's going to be in.
Well, and then kind of to bounce off that in terms of the battery, and we mentioned a little bit, you talked about Yachty there, and there was word recently that he planned on signing with St. Louis, and I thought maybe, when Wainwright for sure got it done, that he'd have to come back for his buddy Waino and catch him for another year at least. But then, of course, we hear another report today that I think it was Toronto is still actively seeking Yachty, and there's a couple of teams. So, but do you expect him to sign here pretty soon for the Cardinals, or do you expect him to be somewhere else?
I'm not that old yet, but is it really just too hard to make a call from wherever he's playing and go, hey, I'm going to come back. Let's get $8 million. Hey, bye. I mean, I don't. It's 2021. He's like, I'll do it when I get back from this. And like, it's just him creating more drama. You can almost say I worked part time as a Yachty defense attorney for the past 8 years, but I'm just kind of starting to get tired of all the drama. I mean, I don't know if they need to give him his own HGTV channel or just a show.
Yeah, right, because we get the back and forth from what he planned on doing, and then he pops off on Instagram all the time, and it seems like he's got his brothers doing the same thing.
Next time you ask me if I'm going to go on the radio show, I might just go, well, give you a couple emojis, and then 10 days later go, yeah, sure, at 3 a.m. in the morning.
No, Dan, what you need to do is tweet out to everybody, hey, where do you guys think, what should I appear on next? What show should I appear on next? And see what they say.
That's right, and then just let them decide. And then they'll go, yeah, you have to go to a remote location in Alaska and do it live. And then there is no radio station there.
That's right. That might be dangerous if you put that all over Twitter.
Fargo season 5 or 6, whatever.
Oh, man. Yeah, no joke. All right, so even if wherever Yachty does go, is this his last year for you, or do you expect him to try to make a comeback even and no matter what happens this season?
I almost think I think he wants to play one more year. I know he said 2, but this is also a guy who, and this is one of the rare times they let this guy into a media room. This is in the winter warm-up a couple years ago. He told us that he was done after this current contract, and now we know that's not to be true. But I just think that him and Wainwright, I think they want to go out together. But I know they didn't want 2020 to be that season. So I think they'll go one more. I can't see them both going, especially Wainwright, who I think really wants to get going with that next phase of his life, because I think he's going to be very busy and very productive. I think they're going to want to call it after this year.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it would just, man, how great would that look to see both of them go out at the same time? You know, it would just feel so right.
Can you imagine Adam Wainwright throwing the final pitch of a World Series clinching game to Yadier Molina?
Man, that'd be too much.
I think Busch Stadium will crack in half, and they have to rebuild it in the offseason.
Yeah, you have to get the Ford Stadium ready to go. That's for sure. Let me flip you over here to the Blues real quick before we let you go, because we know they're in full swing now. Great to see hockey back, and you mentioned some fans getting to come in, which is cool. But how nasty was that Justin Falk shot the other night? That was incredible.
I almost wanted to think that maybe there was that like a stunt double? Was there some pretty good player posing as Justin Falk? And it's just no, that's what he did in Carolina. I think people, even St. Louis, who has supposedly had the best fans, it's just the moniker that won't die. Sometimes they're hard on new players. I mean, speaking of Matt Holliday, I know he hit everything in 2009, but when 2010 came around, he was having a tough time for 2 or 3 months. And then I think Scott Boras sat him down and said, dude, you basically like Captain America. Calm down and just, take a breath. And then Holliday went off and had a great career. So I think Falk just needed time, and he needed a role. And I think the departure of Alex Pietrangelo opened up a lot of stuff for a guy like Justin Falk.
Yeah, that was that was weird to see him the other night in a Vegas uniform play against St. Louis.
Is that really you? It's like when you see that video on the internet, you go, that's not real. Yes, it is.
Yeah. That's exactly right. It was strange, man, no doubt. All right, last thing I want to throw your way before I let you out of here. We got the Super Bowl coming up on Sunday, so give me your pick.
Every time I want to say the Buccaneers, I have to go with the Chiefs, man. I can't go against Patrick Mahomes when the stakes are high, even against a potentially 75-year-old Tom Brady who's just never going to stop playing. He's going to be like the Chris Chelios of the NFL. They have to push him off the field. But I think the Chiefs have too many weapons, man. I mean, I think if you stop one guy, they have 7 other weapons that can beat you. And the top guy being Patrick Mahomes. He's the reason I'm going to watch. Let's put it that way. I'm not even a big NFL fan anymore, but I can't not watch that game. They'll just be talking to me. A quiet TV going, turn me on.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that you say that. I've heard people mention that to me before a little bit. It's like if they're not a huge NFL fan or whatever, it's like I'm still going to watch this game, and not just because it's the Super Bowl and commercials, but man, it's Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady.
I mean, it would basically be like Arnold and Sly fighting in the 90s. I mean, you have to watch.
It sells itself, man. That was you know that when those two teams were the ones that made it a couple weeks ago, the NFL was like, yes, thank you.
They're like, oh my gosh, this is like they've already won the year. They can just close up shop. We just started February, but we already won it. We have the old Tom Brady, the old Logan against like the new Marvel hero. It's like Mahomes is Tom Holland and Brady's old Logan.
Oh, man, that's good stuff. I can't wait for it. That's Dan Buffa. Appreciate you as always, my man. You can follow him on Twitter at Buffa82. Have a great weekend, man.
All right, man. Until next time. See ya.
All right, that's Dan Buffa. Great stuff, man. He's always in with me on the St. Louis Cardinals. He's always in with me on the Blues. And look at that. He even gave it the right pick. Zach, isn't that the second person now that's been on our show with him and Frank that picked Kansas City and made me happy this week, right?
Second this week.
Wow,
It's got to be a
look at
record.
that. Yeah, I mean, we just keep going down the line, man. Everybody's going with it. You can follow him on Twitter at Buffet82. Great stuff from him. When we come back here on the afternoon sports drive, we have some really good news out of college basketball regarding a story, an event, I should say, that happened. It's been a while now, but the implications that it could have held may have been so massive we might not have seen any more college basketball. We'll tell you what that is coming up next here on the afternoon sports drive.
Whoa.
Staring as I go, I gave until my soul hurt, and never told them so. They're watching as I fall, somewhere down below.
Back in afternoon sports drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network, live on location. Brown's Bottle Shop, Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster over here at 128 North Main in Stillwater. Call them up 372-5080 and you can get free curbside pickup. And they've got all kinds of great stuff going on right now over here at Brown's. They just showed me the brand new beer they got in. It's from Edmond and it's from Frenzy Brewing Company. It's called Deadpan. And it's an Irish-style dry stout. I can't wait to try it. That's definitely next on my list. And something tells me that would go perfect with the Super Bowl this Sunday. They also have excellent selections of new Mastercraft pre-made cocktails. It's so good and so easy. You're not going to miss a play because all you need is ice and fill up your glass. It's that easy. You can get it done and come and check them out here at Brown's Bottle Shop to make that happen this Sunday during the Super Bowl. So, Zach, it's been a little while now, but when we had Joe Lunardi on earlier this year, he mentioned one of the most interesting things he told us about other than Oklahoma State was he brought up the issue with the Florida player that collapsed on the floor, and that was, I think, just a week or so prior to that, Keontae Johnson, and he said, look, if that turns out to be COVID-related, this could be a Rudy Gobert situation where they end up shutting down college basketball. And when he told us that, I think you and I kind of both had maybe thought that was a possibility at some time because that probably would have been, it would have been something new, right, that they'd be dealing with. Be like, okay, this guy tested positive earlier in the year and he collapsed because of COVID. But the good news is we find out today that his collapse has been ruled out to COVID. Has not related to COVID-19, which is great news. They haven't announced exactly what it is, but they have gotten that out, which I think is huge because I don't know about you, but clearly, as we know and have said a number of times, that the NCAA tournament has to happen. It's going to happen. But if that had been COVID-related, I just don't know where the NCAA would be. We might not be playing college basketball for a while until they exactly figured out. I mean, you can imagine, right, what the NCAA would do in terms of we got to stop this. We can't let this happen. That kid almost, who knows what could have happened to him had he not had the medical team not been there right away. So, I mean, it's scary nonetheless, but, man, I'm just happy for him, and I'm happy for the sport to hear that was not COVID-related.
Yeah, that's huge for him. I was going to bring that up yesterday, and then the interview with Matt Holliday kind of threw me off, and I forgot about it. I think you're right. I think that if it had come out and it had been COVID-related, they'd been able to prove that. I don't even think the NCAA tournament would have been an issue because I think they would have probably stopped the season as soon as they found out. I think you probably would have seen. I think you probably would have seen the NCAA step in and said, "Hey, listen, we've got COVID issues here. While it doesn't appear to be a massive issue right now with players getting infected. We don't know what the long-term effects are. So I don't think we're going to be able to play anymore. So for that kid, that's awesome. For the rest of college basketball, that's great news as well. It's one of those situations where. You go back to college football, and what is it? What was the heart issue? What was it called?
Myocarditis.
Yeah. We did. When we first heard about that, it was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Are we going to start having heart issues? And then I'm sure there were players at probably every program that dealt with some sort of issue with that. But on a wide scale, it ended up not being as big of a problem. And I think that in and of itself is a huge relief as well, because I think it's safe to say we don't know much about this virus. We don't know much about its long-term effects. We haven't lived with it long enough. Scientists haven't had enough time to fully do research on it. This thing changes every other day. It seems like there's new strains coming in from parts of the world. So yeah, we're going to be living with this thing for a while. And I think the fact that it was found out not to be a COVID issue with that Florida player was huge.
Yeah, and I can't imagine that the NCAA wouldn't have stopped play. But even if they said that they weren't playing, could you imagine the pressure that would have come down on them?
Gosh.
It's like you can't keep going forward with this.
Well, especially if you have coaches like Coach K and you got other coaches that are used to winning that aren't winning. They're like, man, there's really no reason to play this season. This is dangerous. As soon as that happens, because they're already. I would imagine that. Even from outside of college basketball, I would imagine the NCAA, same as the NFL, same as the MLB, the MLS, every other professional sports league out there, is being pressured beyond belief from all kinds of organizations and health societies. Hey, you don't need to be doing this. This is dangerous. We're spreading it. Yada yada yada. Could you imagine a player collapsing, nearly dying on the court and in the hospital, and it ends up being COVID related? I honestly don't see how. And obviously he recovered. He's back with the team, but that's some scary stuff. So I would have to. Yeah, the pressure would just be insane.
Well, and it's curious to think about what would the NCAA tournament have, would they have still attempted to make something happen? Because as you and I said before, that it had to happen from a financial standpoint.
100%.
I mean,
lost more than half a billion.
I mean, you couldn't go, even if this were the case and this was a COVID issue, you couldn't go if you're the NCAA another year without a tournament. I don't know what they would have done. They would have probably said, let's monitor really closely here, but they would have had to found a way to spin it to where it sounded like, we didn't want to do this just because we have to have financial ramifications from it. But at the same time, we really do. So please keep going out there and playing. So it's great news because I did when Lenardi told us that, I kind of feared it a little bit. I was like, man, if that does come back, I just don't know how the NCAA would get away with trying to push forward, but it would have been a crazy story to figure out exactly how that would have happened. Man, I'm like you. I'm glad that it didn't, because it could have been a big-time difference in college basketball. We come back on the afternoon sports drive. Hour number 2 is right around the corner. We're going to get in some buy or sell. Deshaun Watson continuing to make news of where he's going to go. There was a rumor floated out yesterday from a team that may be very, very interested and might just be able to pull off a move to get Deshaun Watson. So we'll get into that coming up in hour number 2, live here from Brown's Bottle Shop. This is the afternoon sports drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network, and we're back after this.
And I don't know how we make it out when we make out on the low. Even if it rains, you'd rather make it snow. Both you and me know we gotta let it go. Laying on the ground, wondering why it's so cold. How we make it out when we make out on the low. Even if it rains, you'd rather make it snow.
Welcome in hour number 2 of the afternoon sports drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network with Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster. I'm live on location at Brown's Bottle Shop, 128 North Main and Miller here at Stillwater. You can call them at 372-5080. And Zach, we all love and enjoy curbside when it comes to food. But is there really anything better than curbside when it comes to getting your favorite drinks? Mm-hmm. I mean, this is ideal. You come over, you call them up at 372-5080. Tell them what you want. They're going to have it ready for you. You pull up. You don't have to get out of your car. It's contactless. It's safe. And you can get whatever you want. They've got lots of new whiskeys that are all tried and tasted by John and the team here, like their Ghostwood 90 proof, brand new, excellent stuff. And they're overstocked on various selections of wines as well. So you've got plenty for everybody, tons of variety. Everyone's going to find what they want here at Brown's Bottle. But Zach, in case you got to stock up for the big game, man, you don't even have to come in if you don't want, which I know you would enjoy, right? Just pull up, grab it, head out.
I have said it before. I will say it again. The best thing to come out of this pandemic is curbside pickup. And liquor is no different.
It's true. They took it to the next level.
Excuse me. I will say there's nothing quite like, though, going into a liquor store and just browsing all of the selections.
Yeah.
It makes it's a special kind of experience that, while you should take advantage of the great curbside, you absolutely should go in a Brown's Bottle Shop, because their selection is just so huge, and there's so many different. It's very eclectic. They've got your traditionals, but then they have stuff that you've never heard of, and it's always fun to try to experiment and try around with some of those stuff. So, I recommend curbside. I absolutely recommend going in.
It's good. Yeah, the
your
Brown's
poison.
Bottle Shop. It's absolutely a beautiful place too. If you've never been in here, like, check it out. I'm looking at the endless selection of wines as far as the eye can see at the moment, and I mean completely down this aisle. You're not going to miss out. They've got a ton of deals. Any wine you can think of, guarantee they're going to have it here at Brown's Bottle Shop. Come and check it out. Very aesthetically pleasing down here. I will say that. I love it. We're over here at 128 North Main in Miller. All right, Zach, let's get into some buy or sell here in the second hour.
Are you buying?
I'd buy that for $1.
Or are you selling?
You'll pick up the phone and you'll sell.
This is Buy or Sell on the Afternoon Sports Drive.
Make money, make money.
Buy or sell on the afternoon sports drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. All right, Zach. So yesterday, I was really impressed again with Rondell. And he has shown that, man, if he sticks around, Robert mentioned earlier today, if he sticks around, this dude, he's going to be great for Oklahoma State. He already is playing really, really well. And as I told you yesterday, that, hey, he gets down in that corner, he's going to hit those threes, man. I mean, that is his sweet spot. And he found it a couple times. He got a couple good looks from the wing and took advantage of his playing time again and had 16 points. So Texas coming up here on Saturday. Buy or sell that Rondell scores 15 or more against the Longhorns. Keeps it going.
I think it's certainly possible, right? I mean, he's played really well at times. He really struggled the last time against Texas. Only had 1 point, but he's gotten I think it's safe to say he's gotten a hell of a lot better. However, he's only hit that 15-point mark 3 times in conference play. He did it against Kansas State, Iowa State, and TCU. But the way he's playing, I think he has a shot. He's really turned it up. But I'm gonna sell, just because you look at, I mean, in those 3 games where he hit 15 or more, like Kansas State, he shot 57%, Iowa State 58%, shot nearly 67%. Last night against TCU, but against those big teams, he kind of struggles. He only had 1 point. It was from the free throw line against Texas. Texas Tech shot 28%, West Virginia 33%, Kansas 27%, Arkansas 28%. So I'll sell it simply based on shooting percentages against those big teams. But he's certainly gotten better as the season goes on. So he'll get close, but I'll sell 15.
Yeah, and it obviously much tougher matchup with Texas. I get that. But, man, the main thing that opens up Rondell, like, he does a great job of getting open, moving without the basketball. But when Cade demands so much respect and will require double teams, he'll be able to get open. He's really utilized that aspect of this game this year as well. So I think that's going to happen here with Texas. They're going to pay a lot of attention to Cade, make sure he doesn't get – because they saw, like, after TCU, it's like, hey, look, it is possible to hold him down for at least a half. Let's see if we can't do it for 2 halves, which is obviously a tall task. But Rondell might be the guy that can feed off of that a little bit. I think he's shooting the ball really, really well. He's taking good shots. He's not afraid of any shot, too, which is always good to see from a younger player like him, that he's not going to shy away from taking open looks or anything like that. So I'm going to buy it. I think he can hit that 15 or more mark against Texas. They're going to need it. And another part of it to me, too, is, man, I'm not saying I've lost confidence in Ice, but I'm not completely convinced that he's going to go out there and turn things around immediately against Texas. because, man, I've said it the last 4 or 5 games. Is he going to turn around? Is he going to turn around? Well, he didn't do it against TCU, and that looked like a really good opportunity. I'm not necessarily sure he can do it against Texas out of all teams. If he does, great. But I'm more confident in the moment, I would say, with Rondell Walker, especially shooting the basketball. So give me a bye there with him scoring 15 or more.
Yeah, and that's fair. I mean, he's playing really, really well. And he shows up when other guards don't. And you mentioned it, man. You hit it right on the head. I need to see ice. I'm not. It's not that I've lost confidence in him, because he is one of the better point guards in the country. But he is going through a slump right now, and not only he, but the team desperately needs him to come out of it. So I'm switching it up a little bit. I'm going to baseball. We talked to Matt Holliday yesterday, and Matt had a lot of really good stuff to say about the team. You look at this roster, and this roster looks really, really talented. We've heard it a few times from people close to the program that don't really mess around, and they say that this team has the potential of being one of the better Oklahoma State baseball teams that we've seen in quite a while. Matt's volunteer assistant coach. He's in charge of the Cowboys' offensive development, as well as outfield play, but his placement on the coaching staff makes a noticeable difference in offensive production this season. Buy or sell?
Yeah, Matt Holliday, I thought about this earlier coming into this job. I was like, man, if I were a recruit in high school and I looked at this coaching staff at Oklahoma State, and I look at Ventura, and I look at Matt Holliday, and I'm like, man. And I think what helps is that it's recency. You get these players that if they were Cardinals fans or just baseball fans, they knew who Matt Holliday was. And so that has a little bit to do with it, too. Like, man, this guy over here, not only that, he was really successful when he played in the major leagues.
Yeah.
But Matt is a guy that when he was in the league, man, it was pure, raw power. Now, of course, he had a lot of if you look at it back at what he did swinging the bat, of course, he can go into detail and show you where you need to be, where you need to get your leverage and all that. And, of course, the game has changed with launch angles and everything, too. But, man, he could make sure, and he could go opposite field. He could locate any pitch in the zone and drive it, and that's something that he will bring to this lineup, which, as you mentioned, I can't wait. You have the incredible talent in the outfield. I mean, I can't wait for that. They're going to be at the plate, covering a lot of ground out there. Defensively should be solid. The pitching's going to be great. And I can't wait to see when the season kicks off exactly what Oklahoma State brings to the table, because they will be tested right away. You talk about Texas Tech to open up the season. It doesn't get much tougher than that in a 3-game series. One of the best teams you'll find anywhere in baseball. So it's going to be you're going to see a lot of competition early on. But yeah, I mean, Matt he's gave us some time yesterday. He's a great guy. You saw it all the time. The Cardinals organization, highly respected. And the other thing, too, Zach, he's been there and done it all.
Yeah.
Like in Major League Baseball, if you look at what he did, he was in a lot of situations. World Series champion. I mean, this guy was there. And he's the wealth of knowledge that he'll bring. Not, as you mentioned, not just hitting, but getting the guys ready to go in the outfield is going to be incredible. You mix it in with the rest of the coaching staff there. I would love to be a recruit coming into Oklahoma State, because the knowledge you can get from simply just opening your ears with these guys, especially Matt Holliday, has to be truly invaluable. And then the other thing that I know about Matt as well, he's not just going to, sit there and tell you about hitting the baseball and how to drive and all that. But he's going to be teaching you about life at the same time, right? He's going to make you and help you be a better person, a better man, a better husband, better future husband, all that stuff. And I think that's what goes unnoticed a little bit sometimes, because it's not always talked about. But Matt Holliday, man, I can't speak enough about the addition and what he's going to bring to this team. And I can't wait to see what he does here again with a full season coming up. And man, we're going to see early if Oklahoma State's got what it takes, and I believe they're going to have that.
Absolutely agree with everything you say. I'm buying it. You look at what Matt did, 15 years in the majors, spent nearly half of his career as an all-star. One of the best hitters in baseball during his time in the league, and he didn't just spend his time in one portion of the country. I mean, he was in Oakland a little bit. He was with the Yankees a little bit. Obviously, Colorado, St. Louis. So he had a huge career in 15 seasons. that's, he was a major player while these kids were growing up and watching. Some of their, I would imagine some of their earliest memories of baseball was watching Matt Holliday. So he's absolutely going to help. And you look at what this team looks like from the offensive perspective. I mean, you got Max Hewitt, Houston Morrill. You go down the lineup a little bit. You got Carson McCusker, Cade Cabanis, a lot of guys that are coming back. Alex Garcia, a lot of guys that are coming. They have 5 seniors that are coming back from last year, taking advantage of that spare COVID year. This team, man, and he mentioned a pitcher, a transfer pitcher out of State College of Florida. Justin Wroblewski, the dude's throwing 95, and he before he went to State College of Florida, he was a pitcher at Clemson, and he struggled a little bit, but obviously going the JUCO route was the right thing. He's a sophomore. He's absolutely going to make a difference on the mound, and that right there is what's fun with the offensive production for Oklahoma State is the pitching staff looks to be really, really good. They returned C.J. Varela. Obviously, you got freshman. He's a freshman again because of COVID, but Bryce Osmond, he's really good. And then you got Wroblewski. This team, the pitching, the hitting, I'm like you said, Texas Tech to open up conference play. They go to Sam Houston here in a few weeks. Their non-conference is always really good. I can't begin to tell you how excited I am to watch that Vanderbilt series. Yeah. My God, yeah, this season is going to be a lot of fun if they can get it in. So Matt Holliday is absolutely going to help offensive production.
Yeah, and he's definitely one of those guys. Look, with everything that he brought to the table in major leagues, it's like you said, it's so important with, especially for his brother to bring him in. It's like, hey, you're going to be able to come in here, and we're about as recent with you being out of the league as anybody, right? Yeah. So he's coming in with a wealth of knowledge, and it wasn't all that long ago he was able to get it done at the highest level, which I think is a huge boost to any coaching staff, and absolutely this one. I'll never forget the last thing I'll say about Matt here. I'll never forget what was believed to be at the time, had the potential to be his last at bat with St. Louis, and somehow he magically he goes oppo against the Pirates and then took it out of the yard, and it was just an incredible moment. One of the few times you'll see Matt actually get really emotional. Yeah. He was trying not to, but man, he knew. Like he did it. It was incredible.
Well,
one of the things I'll never forget.
That and him and his wife, they host a podcast, Table 40. If you're looking for a good podcast, Table 40, man, that is it. That's where it's at.
Absolutely. All right, I'm going to go to the Super Bowl here in a couple of days. We're going to have much more on that coming up tomorrow.
There's a Super Bowl coming up?
There's a Super Bowl coming up, right? That's
really?
Unbelievable.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. But at least for now we know that it is because, man, we got a little bit of a scare yesterday. The Chiefs won. Yeah. Oh, my gosh. That story is just insane. I really can't believe it. But so we knew Patrick Mahomes was in line. He didn't have the haircut, thank goodness. But he was in line to get the haircut. Last year against the Niners, if you remember in that game through the first half, no touchdowns, right? He didn't have a lot of yards, and he ended up with 2 interceptions in that game. He still won the MVP because he was the reason they were able to get it going with the defense late in that game, and he ended up with a solid amount of yards, and the touchdowns followed. But in this one, against this Bucs defense, which we know is very good, buy or sell that he doesn't throw any interceptions in this Super Bowl, because I don't know about you, Zach. I believe if that's the case and he's not throwing any interceptions, Kansas City has a really good chance to win.
Yeah, no, you're spot on there. Man, that's tough, because while he has been really good this year, interception can happen at any time, and you see players, defensive players rise up in big-time games, and there's no bigger game than the Super Bowl. I can't imagine that Tampa Bay isn't going to be absolutely jacked up. So as much as you don't want to hear this, I'll sell.
Don't do it to me.
I'll sell. I think he has at least one, maybe not more than one, but I think he throws at least one. But I'm still sticking with Kansas City. I think they're going to be too much, even though it's a home game technically for Tampa Bay. I'm gonna pick Kansas City, and I think that offense is just going to be too much. But I say he throws a pick.
Yeah, I think I'll buy that
just for some variety.
Yeah, well, and the reason as well is if you look at earlier against Tampa Bay, he was flawless, man. I mean, earlier this season, 462 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's about as good as you can ask for against that defense. So I think he's going to be comfortable throwing against them. Now, I do expect Tampa to switch it up. I don't expect it to be anywhere near what they showed him in that first matchup, so he's going to have to adjust to whatever they throw out there. If they continue to blitz on him for some reason like they did in that first matchup, he'll have another career day. So I expect a lot less of that. And, watching some of that Super Bowl again recently, you look back at those 2 interceptions he had last year. One of them was clearly on him, and the other one was both ways. It was behind the receiver, and it was tipped off the hands. One of those where it was kind of a nail in the coffin for some people. I mean, with the way the Chiefs had played that season, they came back multiple times, but that one looked so late in the game. You were like, man, is our defense really going to be able to get another stop here? And ultimately they did, and we all know what happened. But I think he's going to be much, much better in this one. The numbers, Zach, by the way, if you look at the numbers Patrick Mahomes puts up typically with a couple of weeks to prepare, is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
What he's able to do with extra time, him and Andy Reid, is just unbelievable. So I think I'm going to go ahead and buy it. But I'm like what I said to open this up with you. If he does that, man, they have a really good shot of winning with no turnovers.
What a homer.
Yeah, I know. It's. I'm sorry, I had to do it. What's your next one?
Yeah, so I'm going back to basketball, and I'm gonna stick with Isaac Likely. We've seen a fairly decent, if you can call it that, decline over the past few weeks. He had his best game of the year against West Virginia. He puts up 22 points. And then you look at 15 against Kansas State, 10 against Kansas, 9 against Baylor, 7 against Iowa State and Arkansas, and then 4 against TCU. Has just been in a real steady decline ever since for an entire month. January 4th was West Virginia, and February 3rd was TCU. So we've seen a month, and I'm not saying that it couldn't get worse. But I mean, you look at it. I mean, he shot 33% from the field last night. He was 1 of 3. He had, he finished with 2 fouls, I think is what that is. Let me scroll up a little bit here. Finished with 1 foul. But he had 3 assists, 2 turnovers. He just really struggled. So buy or sell that Isaac is able to, and he knows it more than anyone else. I'm not saying anything that he hasn't already been thinking. Boynton, I'm sure Boynton's not sitting there riding him and telling him things that he doesn't already know, because I'm sure Ice is beating himself up more than anyone else could. So buy or sell, he's got a few days here to kind of figure it out, and he has a bounce back game against Texas.
Yeah, man. I feel like these last 4 or 5 games, this is one we've thrown out there because we want it to happen so bad. But I'm going to sell. I kind of mentioned earlier that he's just not the guy. I know he's been there, done that, and I expect him. This isn't going to be how his season ends. He's going to. I mean, last year we saw when he came back from his illness, he was turning it on. He was the reason that team was succeeding, and I think he has that ability again late here in the year, and they're going to need him. I mean, my goodness. As I said to open the show, if you get a typical Ice performance against TCU last night, do you lose by 3?
No.
I mean, really. I think there's a big difference, and if he provides any sort of spark, and he didn't. And the thing about it is he's just looked a little uncomfortable. He's looked a little out of sorts, and maybe, I don't know, I wouldn't necessarily say lack of focus for me, but he just doesn't look as comfortable. When you see that normal Ice out there, he's always got the swagger. He looks like he can take on anybody at any time, and he can make any shot he wants to and go out there and drive against anybody and absorb contact. There just hasn't been that recently. And, last night I would say probably the worst performance lately because, as you mentioned, the other statistics weren't there either. He wasn't really getting a chance to get the ball to anybody else. And all that stuff. So I want him to have a great game against Texas, and man, that would be huge, because if he does, that everything else hopefully would fall in place against one of the best teams in the country. But I'm just not really sold that that's going to take place. I would buy Rondell more. I would be leaning a little bit more towards Bryce a little bit in this one, because as I said, and competition, it was tough yesterday against TCU, but it's getting a little bit tougher against Texas coming up on Saturday.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think if you look at Ice, and he has a typical performance against TCU last night, I don't think Oklahoma State loses by 3. I don't think. I think if you get that performance from him, because you look at it, he only had 1 rebound. He had 3 assists, which is still impressive. But he had 2 turnovers, and he only had 4 points. He was 1 of 3 from the field, and he was 2 of 4 from the free throw line. He just really struggled. And if he has a typical performance where he's finishing with, 15, 16, 17 points, I think Oklahoma State goes into that second half with a double-digit lead, because Ice is very much a run killer because he goes on his own. He gets those breakaway points. He can score points in the paint that other Oklahoma State players can't, and we just haven't seen that. But I mean, there's a Saturday against Texas is as good a time as any. You look at what he did against Texas the first time, he struggled, and I'm sure he's going to be thinking about that the first time, going into this game. But he was huge against Texas Tech. He was huge against West Virginia. He's played very well at times this year, and he's just in a huge skid. So I'll buy it. I'm not saying that he's going to go out and he's going to hit a season high. He's going to break that 22 points that he did against West Virginia, but he has the capabilities. He has the potential to do it. It's been an entire month, and I'm sure that he more than anybody wants to break out of that skid. So I'll buy it. I think we see a traditional Ice performance. I think we see anywhere between 12 and 16 points, and he's bringing in 5 to 6 or 7 rebounds, and he's dishing out 3 to 5 assists, and something that we really need to see him do is try to limit those turnovers. He's been pretty turnover prone the past month or so. So if he can figure out the turnovers and kind of get out of his own head, I think we'll see a traditional Ice performance.
Yeah, and some of these have been coming from, they want to run in transition, obviously. But if you watch with Ice, he'll get the rebound, and he's immediately trying to make a really good pass, which at times he can do. But when the length of the floor is what it is, sometimes he's trying to fit it in too tight of a spot, and it just gets taken away. And next thing you know, that's a really quick turnover. Like, you just got the ball back in your hands. And it's not just him. We've seen that kind of be a trend a little bit, and that happens with the team that runs as much as Oklahoma State does. But that's something that has to be cleaned up. Turnovers are one thing, but getting them before you even get into an offensive set or get a chance at a transition bucket certainly doesn't help. So I'm with you, man. I can't wait for him when it does come back for him, because when it does, it's going to be amazing. I know he's going to have a big game, and it'll be a big reason why Oklahoma State ultimately, hopefully, wins that one whenever it is, and hopefully it's a Saturday, because, man, they're going to need all hands on deck against Texas the way that they've been playing this year. When we come back here on the afternoon sports drive, so we talked a little bit about Deshaun Watson earlier this week. There's one team, though, that might all of a sudden be in the lead to get Deshaun Watson, and I guarantee you it's not a team a lot of people have thought about. It's coming up next. Find out on the afternoon sports drive.
Today met my doom, took one in the boiler room. Put food on the table of a dying breed man. Once I was a broken heart, once I tore your heart apart. Once my heart put out before I ever.
Welcome back in Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler, Zach Lancaster, live from Brown's Bottle Shop, 128 North Main and Miller here in Stillwater. You can call them at 372-5080. Place your order and get free curbside pickup. And right now, they have pre-mixed Moscow mules and margaritas in a box. How easy is that? You can have your cocktails on tap and cold, ready to go in the fridge. You don't have to do anything. You just got to purchase them, pick them up. That's it. Super easy, and you've got your Super Bowl ready to go, whether you're planning on having a get-together or whatever you're doing for the Super Bowl. Make sure you have your drinks ready as well. John Fransman and his team, they taste test everything before they even put these out. So it's only the best at Brown's Bottle Shop, guaranteed.
How fun would that be?
372-5080. To have that job, it would be incredible.
So what do you do now that you've graduated college? Well, I work at a liquor store and I taste test drinks.
I get to taste test everything.
That's what I do.
The store. Yeah, man, that's awesome.
How fun.
That is, sign me up. I'll just say that now. Sign me up. All right, so let's get into. So Zach, we mentioned Deshaun Watson earlier this week, and there's been a couple more teams that have been in the sweepstakes, been added to the sweepstakes, and one of them is the Denver Broncos, which, I mean, it goes kind of back to the whole. We mentioned, why would Deshaun want to go to the New York Jets? Well, why would he go to the Denver Broncos? I mean, I know there's a couple more weapons. Cortland Sutton is good, but that's about it. I mean, Jerry Jeudy has potential, I guess. He didn't really show a ton this year. So I don't know this whole, Deshaun has the ability to go wherever he wants, but what's up with this, man? He's going to go to these really crappy teams. I mean, you're telling me that it's a better situation than the Texans. I don't get it, but that's not even the team I want to get to. The one that was rumored earlier this week was that Deshaun Watson could be heading to the Las Vegas Raiders. There was rumors that Derek Carr might be moved. What the Raiders would need is 2 first-round picks for Derek Carr, which you would think they could be able to probably get that done. So that way they get those 2 first-round picks. They could flip him for Deshaun because they'd be able to add 2 first-rounders of their own. You could get 4 first-round picks over to the Texans for Deshaun Watson. And I think they're in a really good spot for this if you think about it, because Derek Carr, he's really on the cheap right now for the Raiders. He's basically in a pay-for-play basis. He would only cost the Raiders $2.5 million in dead cap, which is nothing. I mean, that's like a gimme right there. And any team that would get Carr, they'd get him at $20 million for 2 years. And, of course, none of that money's guaranteed right now. So they're in about as good a spot as anybody if you look at the overall details of that contract. And I think if the Raiders can get it done, they have to try. I mean, they really, really do, because Derek Carr clearly isn't the long-term guy in their eyes right now, right? If he was, they wouldn't be considering moving him. But with Deshaun potentially being out there, and they believe, this is the Raiders, by the way, they believe they have the offensive weapons to be competitive, even though I would probably disagree with that as well. They have one really solid weapon in Darren Waller, and that's about it, unless they make a move this offseason. So you throw him in there with a defense that's decent at times, right? They played good enough against the Chiefs to beat them this past year. But it brings me back to one interesting look here. With the 2 teams I just mentioned there, the Raiders and the Broncos, what do we have in common here? What's the common denominator? How about the fact that they're both sitting in the AFC West and they're chasing one team? And right now, they think both of those teams think they're a quarterback away from really trying to be competitive in that division. You've got, in that division, clearly, you've got Kansas City and everybody else. And I would think that the Chargers are probably the next up to be any sort of threat. We'll see how that happens, what happens this year with Justin Herbert again. But other than that, I really don't consider the Raiders or Broncos any type of threat. But add Deshaun Watson to the mix, maybe it's a little scarier for one of those teams, for the teams that they face, maybe. But, man, I'm telling you, if the Raiders really think they can get this done, it's now or never, basically, because Derek Carr, he improved this year, and I think he proved some people wrong. But he's limited, I think is the best way to put it.
Yeah, no, I think if you're Houston and you get any team that's willing to pay the exorbitant price that they want, I think you take it, especially if you can get a quarterback out of it. Right now, Derek Carr is he's not great. He's certainly dropped off since that solid season he put up 3 or 4 years ago. Hadn't really been worth it since. But if you can get Derek Carr on the cheap, obviously any quarterback right now would be better than a quarterback that doesn't want to play for your organization. Plus, if you can get at the very least 2 first-round draft picks out of the deal, maybe more, depending on the quarterback you're going to get in return, I think that Houston would be silly not to. And that's something you and I talked about, Tuesday? Talked about it on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. Houston has put themselves in a rather precarious situation. You have a quarterback that's worth an insane amount of money that doesn't want to play for your organization. You've ticked him off so much, and you've gone behind his back and done things to irritate him and frustrate him so much that he no longer wants to play if you're not willing to get rid of him. And so what do? Well, we don't want to get rid of him, but if we are going to get rid of him, this is what we want, and it's an insane amount in return. So
yeah.
if you get a team willing to take advantage of it, you better jump on it. I get that Derek Carr is not a fair trade for Deshaun Watson, but at least you get a serviceable quarterback that you don't have to spend $180 million over 10 years for.
Well, and what I think the ultimate goal would be for the Raiders would be if they don't necessarily just trade him to the Texans, but instead they just flip him. So they are able to, for instance, if you look at the draft, the Jets have 2 picks in the first round. If you could trade Derek Carr for those first 2 first-round picks, 2 of them there, you get those and you add those to the 2 you already have, and you combine that for 4 first-round picks, and maybe you could sprinkle in a Raiders defensive player or something like that, or whatever, like they've been asking. You throw that in, you can get it done and get Deshaun Watson over there, and they might not even, the Texans would be in the situation where it's like, all right, we now own the second pick. Let's turn this into a quarterback, and they maybe start over. So, and then that's not ideal. But it would be interesting. It's definitely a move to keep an eye on. The Raiders might sneak up, and I know John Gruden's been like, oh, but Derek Carr's my guy. Well, I mean, let's be completely honest here. Deshaun Watson would happily slide in as your favorite player if he were to come over and hopefully, for the Raiders' sake, change that franchise. But I do think it's pretty interesting as well, Zach. I read the story again earlier today. It wasn't all that long ago, right? Earlier this year, when Deshaun Watson, or this past year, when Deshaun Watson signed that extension, he was thrilled. If you go back and you look at that Twitter post that he put on, it was, Houston, love you guys. Can't wait to come back. This is my home. I love this franchise. And then, man, things, what blows my mind is this was all after DeAndre Hopkins. So whatever was said or done, or the decision to not go with who he wanted for the GM position, maybe that was bad enough. I don't know. I don't know if Deshaun Watson had somebody in his ear saying, you need to do this right now. This isn't a good idea. But that's where, like, I'm this whole time I've understood what he's doing. I get it. I wouldn't want to be necessarily with the Texans right now either, especially being that young and successful in the NFL. But at the same time, he got himself into this mess. Yeah. You look back and it's like, man, you had the opportunity to say no. And you could have moved on at some point here and not have been locked up. But now you went ahead and did it because whatever you saw, you must have loved Houston good enough or must have been told that we're going to get weapons that will satisfy you and what you need on the offensive side. And he was like, yeah, that's good enough for me to sign this huge extension. And now it's like, man, you have to understand that he is just regretting this at this point. But you go back to the youth and you go back to the dollar signs, and I think it was just all a little too much. And he said, yep, I'm going to do it. And now look at him. He's begging to get out of there.
Yeah, but I think anyone that gets presented with a situation where you get that's like 10 generations, worth of life-changing money. And you look at when he signed that deal, it certainly wasn't the same situation it was in now. And we talked about it a few weeks ago when this thing really started to unravel. I would have to think that Deshaun Watson was told by probably more than one person in that organization, hey, listen, we've signed you to a massive deal. Over the next few years, we're going to start piecing together some guys to put around you. We're going to get some playmakers. We're going to revamp the defense a little bit. We're going to give you a couple of offensive weapons. And so I'm sure, and I'm not, Houston's certainly not, it's not like living in Jacksonville. I mean, it's a cultural city. It has tons and tons and tons and tons of stuff to do. It's not like you're living in a backwoods, type of cesspool. So I would imagine that situation presented itself and it looked pretty good. And then that's what makes me question his value as a player, Zach, overall, for himself. If he was told that by Texans or the organization, they're like, hey, we're going to build around you. He was really okay with hearing those words, that in a few years or in a couple years or in a year. I mean, because if he understands where he is in the league and what he could have done in terms of saying no and realizing, look, I could pretty much go anywhere I wanted, including teams that are in position to return or get to a Super Bowl in the near future here. There's nothing in the world that could have told him that the Texans by any means were going to be in that position anytime soon. I mean, anybody could see that. I don't think Deshaun Watson was just like convinced completely. So I don't know. I mean, I think the money thing played into it, but I do question his ability to really understand where he is in the league right now. I get the love for a city. I get the love for a team. You've been there and you want to be able to continue your career. But, man, sometimes the decisions young quarterbacks make when they're in the league, and those are their most valuable years, really do make me scratch my head, and this is one of them. Well, I think you look at over the next 5 or 6 years, if he figures out where he's going to go and he wherever he winds up, he has success, and this situation right here, what we've dealt with the past 6 months is going to make one of the best 30 for 30s that we've seen in a long time, because he's at some point he's gonna be interviewed by somebody, or he's gonna come out and do a tell-all, and he's either gonna be like, yeah, that's exactly what it was. I wanted They offered me this money and they told me they were going to build around me, and then it never happened. And they told me that I would have a say in who they were going to bring in for the next offensive coordinator, and that didn't happen, and the head coach, and that didn't happen, and this and that, and it was just horrible. Or he's going to come out and it's going to be nothing like that, and he's going to be like, yeah, all those rumors, man, people just started talking, and I was just sitting back, I was just waiting, it's no big deal, whatever.
Yeah, and it just, it goes back and you play into it with the whole DeAndre Hopkins thing. Had it been any other receiver, maybe. There's like 2 other receivers in the league. But anybody other than that, it would have been like, okay. But with them moving DeAndre Hopkins in the way that he did,
yeah,
as if he needed any other sign. And we've gone back and said, look, you understand that was Bill O'Brien, and he's no longer there. And I'm sure the pitch was, hey, Deshaun, Bill O'Brien's not going to be here anymore. We're gonna make sure that it's a lot better from here on out in that position. We're gonna make sure none of that ever happens again. But still, you're telling me that was enough for him to be like, yeah, no, that's enough for me. Yeah, we just got rid of my best weapon. Sure, of course. I don't buy it, man. I don't know what Deshaun was thinking at that time. But hey, as you and I well know, my friend, money can influence quite a bit.
I was going to say, man, if someone offered me that kind of money, I wouldn't care. I don't care if it's a terrible situation. You want to pay me a couple $100 million? That's sure, whatever. I don't care. You want to jerk me around, screw me over, take away all my playmakers? It's okay.
So you're telling me when they guaranteed him $111 million and he saw that on the paper, he said, DeAndre Hopkins who?
Who? What? I'm sorry. I'm going to cry all the way to the bank. Yeah, get out of here. Yeah. Get out of here.
Oh, man, what a mess. We're going to keep up with the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes. Who knows where he's going to end up, but the Raiders seem to be the latest team to put their foot in the water. Get him on Twitter at ZLancaster91. I'm at the Patty Wheels. When we come back on the afternoon sports drive, we'll tell you what we learned to round out this Thursday, live from Brown's Bottle Shop. Back after this.
Feel like I'm gonna puke, cause my taxes are due. Do my best, we'll begin with a 1 or a 2. Been a hell of a ride, but I'm thinking it's time to grow.
Metronome.
Man, I'm back to something.
Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network with Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster live from Brown's Bottle Shop at 128 North Main in Miller. Call them at 372-5080. Get your free curbside pickup or come on in and check out their huge selection. They're overstocked on various selections of wines right now. They've got master-crafted pre-made cocktails ready to go, all the beer you could want. Of course, Chuck is the beer guru here, and he can help you out with anything you need. I was talking about the new one they had in earlier out of Edmond, and it looks amazing, and I can't wait to try it. It's going to be my I've already decided it's going to be my Super Bowl brew coming up, and that's the other thing you got to make sure you have ready to go is get your drinks now. Don't wait till the last second. On Sunday, you want to come in and get it done and have them ready to go. Put them on some ice, put them in the freezer, put them in the fridge, wherever you want. And you can find it all here at Brown's Bottle Shop. All right, so round out this show, we're going to tell you what we learned on this Thursday.
The day is coming to an end. Time to find out if these two got any smarter. Let's find out what the guys learned today on the Afternoon Sports Drive.
Well, I learned something today.
So I actually learned this yesterday, but I had to change it up with the whole Barber stuff. That story just kind of took over. But it is sticking with Kansas City because this is funny. Anthony Sherman, the fullback for Kansas City, rarely used, but when he is used occasionally in the passing game or anything like that, he seems to make a big play. He's known as the Sausage in Chiefs Kingdom, which has to be a top-tier nickname in any sport ever, the Sausage. He was on the Pat McAfee show yesterday, I believe it was, and they talked about a prank that was pulled on him. And it all stems back to one of the Major League Baseball players, Adam LaRoche. Anyone that watches Major League Baseball, especially around here, probably follow the NL Central, you know that name. He was good friends with Anthony Sherman. And earlier, Sherm had put, get this, 12,000 Oreos. He had dumped them into his car from the sunroof. It was open, and he dumped in 12,000 Oreos. And LaRoche opened the door, and there were Oreos everywhere. And so he said, how am I going to get Sherman back? Well, it turns out that he got in touch with Chiefs punter Dustin Colquitt and their long snapper. And he said, guys, here's what I need from you to do. I need you guys to get Sherman's phone and figure out how to get into his Twitter because I've got something cooking up for him here. And they managed to, over time, figure out Anthony Sherman's passcode. basically asking for his phone because they needed to use it, got into it, and got into his Twitter and posted a tweet on his actual account looking like it came from him. And here's what it said. "You know what I love more than my truck? My freedom. Join me in fighting for those who don't have it. Click ShermFightsForFreedom.org to win my truck. I'm giving it away." And what it is it's an organization that fights human trafficking. So it was well planned out for Adam LaRoche. He managed to actually put it on his Twitter account, on Anthony Sherman's Twitter account, to where Sherm couldn't say no because they ended up raising so much money for this organization. And so he ended up giving his truck away. And so I think if I'm deciding who won that battle, it had to be LaRoche. Like that prank is well thought out, well planned, and at the same time you raised money for a great cause and forced Anthony Sherman to get rid of his truck. That's about as well planned out and as well executed as it gets right there, Zach.
That's the best part of it, right? Because not only did he raise money for a great cause, but that in itself made it to where Sherman had to give it up. Like that's the best part. It wasn't like he could be like, "Wow, I'm just going to give it away and some random person's going to get it." It was beneficial. So like that played into it. I mean, that's just perfect. Like, "Oh, well, I'm raising money, and if you renege on the deal, it makes you look like a dirtbag, boy." So yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of that.
The Oreo official Twitter account responded to it and said, "To make this sweeter, we're going to donate $12,000 to the charity." And just kept on building. And so many people responded like, "Oh, okay, well, I'm going to enter. I'm going to donate." Tim Tebow even said he loved the idea. I mean, it just couldn't get gotten any better for Anthony Sherman, who lost the truck, but it was for a great cause.
Could you imagine the mess 12,000 Oreos would make?
Oh my! Have you seen the picture?
Especially if the sunroof is open, so you know the weather is nice, and then you dump 12,000 Oreos in the heat and the nasty.
He said on the podcast that he dumped package after package, and he made sure he had up to 12,000. Just kept dumping them in the sunroof. It just sounds like an absolute yeah. Imagine if you're LaRoche and you open that up. It's like you said, they've been kind of melting in there and stuff. Oh my gosh, terrible.
And so to put that into kind of perspective, a regular size, like a standard package of Oreos, only has 45 cookies in it.
Wow!
Oh my!
That is dedication.
Gosh, that's a lot of money. Oh man! So this is cool. This kind of up your alley. I think you'll appreciate this, and it's got an Oklahoma State tie to it. So, former Oklahoma State basketball player Cody McElroy. I played football at, I believe, Southeastern Oklahoma State, played at Southeastern, okay. But he was an Oklahoma State basketball player for a little bit, and he was brought up, he's currently on the practice squad of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he was brought up in the pool report because Cody McElroy, who is 6'6", is currently playing the role of Travis Kelce in practice. Yeah, so that's a fun little tie in there.
Yeah, and it's interesting because players like that are on practice squads that are able to kind of mimic what they might see out of star players on the opposite team. It's really cool to hear about that because those to me are somewhat of your unsung heroes.
Absolutely.
Like you get like if you have a really speedy guy, you can say, "Hey, you're going to try to imitate some Tyreek Hill for us," or for instance. You had a couple of guys we heard earlier in the season that were with the Ravens that that were facing the Ravens, for instance, that were trying to imitate what Lamar Jackson would do. And those guys are the unsung heroes to me for football teams on the practice squad.
That and for those of you, I know we got to get out of here for the end of the show, but for those of you who just this would become as no surprise. 2 Baylor basketball games, two men's basketball games have been postponed due to COVID. I know, it's shocker, right? Saturday's game against TCU and then next Wednesday's game against OU, they have both been postponed. So man, I'm just so surprised.
Yeah, really, really shocked. A good thing Oklahoma State already got theirs in, and they can focus on Texas. We'll have more on that game tomorrow. We'll get you ready to go. All you need to know about